Hello, friends and neighbors, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. I hope you're all well. It's a Saturday, and beautiful day out today here in Minnesota. So, I know it's been a while since I've done a live video, so I thought I'd do one again today and start in on something. My young assistant cannot be with me tonight again, and when I first started doing these videos, I gotta say, I did them originally in order to keep my sanity, because I had to keep thinking about things, and I had to keep presenting to people. There's something innate in my character that forces me to talk like the ancient mariner in Coleridge's poem or something. So anyway, it was a delight, and has been a delight to be able to make these videos and to be able to read great works that I love with you all. And it has kept me very much going through some rather tricky times. I mean, it's been tricky. It's now May. Today is May 2nd. Yesterday was May 1st, May Day. It's a May 1st has always been a tremendous celebration. St. Joseph the Worker in the Catholic Church. Before that, it was a major feast day in Rome. It was a major feast day in pagan cultures. It basically marks the start of the year, the start of the coming alive again and everything fructifying, right? And so anyway, I came to a conclusion yesterday that I'm just going to read what I can with you while I can. It's delightful for me to be able to present to you, and I love reading this stuff. And hopefully I give some insight to you of some sort. So first, just a quick thought here. I've been thinking about schools and about the end of the year. We have a month to go now, May, and God bless teachers that are trying to struggle through this. It's a heck of a thing. It's shifted a great deal of what we're trying to do as educators, and I know that it's tough for students too. I am not a big fan of online education myself. I must say that education, it seems to me, is something that happens between two human beings. That one human being draws another human being out of their own small world, their own little cave, and draws them up to a light of understanding. And that's true from young grades all the way up to college level. That we are, as educators, as teachers, as parents, we are trying to draw young people who are not yet fully grown forth from the earth, so to speak. We're trying to draw them out so that they can become human. And we do so by showing them beautiful things and wonderful things. There's a great work by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Well, it's not a great work. It's a big work by Jean-Jacques Rousseau called Emile. And Rousseau had great moments, and he had some rather lousy moments. And Emile is a book about education, and it's rather long, and I found it a little tricky to read myself. But he has some good points in there, and one of the major points that he makes is that you try to use everything at your disposal, the tutor does, in order to draw the natural sense of wonder out of the student, out of Emile. And I think that that's what we do, and we ought to do as teachers. We don't try to stuff facts into them like the character out of Charles Dickens' Hard Times, Mr. Gradgrind. We also don't try to keep them to a standard all the time and just force them through a series of hoops. That's not education, that's bureaucracy. When we do education, we have to nurture young people like growing a plant, like growing a rose, or growing corn, growing peas in the garden. Or tomatoes. We have to take care of the little tomatoes. And we do so, I think, by giving them nutrients and water and air and light. You could say by shoveling manure on them, maybe, if you were cynical. But I think the manure that we shovel on them is the manure of great works, beautiful works that are intriguing and engaging and exciting. And one can find great works from every age, from the very young to the old. Robert Louis Stevenson's poems, for instance, or the stories of Arthur, or the children's stories like The Little Engine That Could, or Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel, or Clancy Hollings books, Paddle to the Sea and Pagoo and Tree in the Trail. And we find stories that we read to them, and we engage them in poetry, and we engage them in learning of the basics so that they can survive in their further education. Now, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a mathematician, but one could do the same thing in mathematics and science. And this sounds radical, but in some ways it's like throw out the standards, throw out the state standards. Why conform to them anymore? Why focus on getting a kid into college when the college is going to eat them alive and is going to cost tons of money and probably won't give them the education they could get otherwise? Why not focus instead on bringing them to life in terms of thinking and wonder and marvel at what's around them? That's what I wish our modern education would begin focusing on after this catastrophe of a month of online learning. And I do call it a catastrophe because I can't speak for every family. I know for my family, we have had a month of struggle, and we've had a month of trying to keep up with the assignments. We've had a month of fighting addiction and depression, and it's been rough. And I don't know, if your family's that way, let me know. Leave a comment. It's not been easy, I think, for anybody, teachers, students, parents, in this past month to go through this crisis of online learning or distance learning, call it whatever you want. But I think another month of it would be tougher. And I think that another year of it, because some people are predicting that we're going to have a whole year of online learning next year, would be absolutely devastating. That's my soapbox, but I think it would be absolutely devastating. It was Marshall McLuhan, the great Canadian philosopher, who said the medium is the message. And I think he was absolutely right. The medium is the message. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Dad. I was wondering if...
Just a minute, please. I'm online.
Sorry.
Thank you. Marshall McLuhan, when he said the medium is the message, I think he meant, and he explains this in his book, The Mechanical Bride, I think that he meant that how we deliver information is just as important as the information that we're delivering. If I, for instance, use this text versus text online, it changes the nature of the text. If I try to teach through this medium versus a one-on-one, in person, in the flesh, it changes the nature of the delivery. There are ways to get around that, certainly, but I think that there are superior and inferior forms of delivery, just as there are superior and inferior texts and subject matter. So I think that if, for instance, we're going to be moving to an online learning form in every discipline and every school, I think we're staring down the barrel of an absolutely devastating, catastrophic event. So we'll see what happens, certainly. Pray God all goes well. But until we can get together, you and I, right, Lyle Boudreau, John Spurgeon, whoever else is watching this, until we can get together and talk over a beer or a whiskey or a cup of tea about ideas and thoughts, this is what we have right here. So let's use it a bit. I want to read with you, because my young assistant is not here, I want to read with you this text, this great text by William Shakespeare, Thelma. Or, if it weren't flipped by the reversal of the camera in Facebook, Hamlet. Hamlet is one of my absolute favorite plays by William Shakespeare, and I wanted to read it with you. And so I'm going to begin it now, and I'll bring my young assistant back to do some more reading from Wizard of Earthsea, but we'll I don't know, we'll space them evenly or something, so that sometimes doing Hamlet, sometimes Wizard of Earthsea. And you can tune in to the one you like. Give a thumbs up to the one you like. All right, so William Shakespeare's Hamlet. What to say about this? First off, I'm using the Folger's Shakespeare Library. Now, I'm not a fan of Folger's Shakespeare Library for very stupid reasons here. The stupid reason I don't like Folger Library is that the printing itself makes the pages a little hard to turn. And the thickness of the book makes it hard for my clumsy fingers to grasp the book. That's a stupid reason to dislike the printing, I know. But there it is. So, Hamlet is, to make a long story short, the tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. And to give just a brief thing off the top of my head, from what I know, Hamlet is written after the death of Shakespeare's son, Hamlet, who died as a young man. And it also embodies a great many of the themes that we've seen before in his other plays. So, what's the year of publication? 1597 to 16 something or another? It's right there at the end of the 16th century, beginning of the 17th century. And, God bless you. And it's written at a time of Shakespeare's highest powers. And he's really at the height of his ability when he writes this play. Now, I don't need to go into too much detail here with you about the nature of the scholastic debate. But I really think that this play is the embodiment of his scholastic debate issue. There are lots of themes in Hamlet. Feel free to think about them or read about them as you wish. I'm not reading this to say this is the only way to read it. I'm simply suggesting that this is an embodiment of, I think, one theme that Shakespeare had rolling around in his genius head. And I'll point out things that I find interesting along the way. Again, your interpretation is your interpretation. You're free to have it. Do as much research and reading as you can to find out whether it holds water or not. But I'm going to read this play in terms of that scholastic debate that occurred in the 1200s. For those of you who are new to this, that debate between the scholastic men of Europe occurred in the mid to late 1200s, and it was essentially a debate about the nature of ideas, about the nature of our language and its connection to reality. And there were two camps. There were the Nominalists and the Realists. The Nominalists, the name comes from the Latin nomen, for name. The Nominalists held that our language is connected only in name only to the things that it represents. There's no other worldliness or world beyond this world for a nominalist. A nominalist holds that language is it's a tool developed by man to distinguish one object from another so that we can function in the world. But they disregard or dismiss the idea that those names connect to any reality beyond this world at all, including the reality, if you will, of a soul or an afterlife or a God. Now, nominalists believe in God, but for them, God represents a function in this world. Okay, so they're not atheists. It's a different thing. If you want a further insight into this, I did a video earlier on nominalism, which you can look into. The realists, on the other hand, held that our language is a discovery of a reality beyond this world. And so when we talk about a thing, we use a word to distinguish a thing, we are actually tapping into a power beyond this world called a logos, a pattern. And that pattern rests in the mind of the divine himself, in the mind of God. So for the realists, words have tremendous power, and they are connecting to almost a very spiritual, almost magical connection to another world. For our young man, Hamlet, we see at the very beginning of the play that his father, Hamlet Sr., is dead already, and his uncle, Claudius, has married his mother, Gertrude. And Hamlet has come back to Denmark in order to see his father off, to say goodbye to the corpse, but also in order to find out what on earth is going on at the court, because it's very strange for his father to have kicked the bucket so early. And Hamlet comes back from the College of Wittenberg. Wittenberg College in Germany was a newly founded college. It had been founded sometime in the early 1500s. And Wittenberg College had, I think, the second or third graduating class included Martin Luther, who goes on to be one of the primary forces behind the Protestant Reformation in Europe. And the Protestant Reformation itself is sort of it's not a byproduct. It's an offshoot of that scholastic debate. So automatically we have, just from the very start of the play, a reference to that debate between nominalism and realism. So I'm going to proceed here by just reading the first act, and we'll read the first scene together. Hamlet is Prince of Denmark, and we open with a scene that has a ghost in it. So hopefully you have your copy of Hamlet, of Thelma, and you can read along with me. Hamlet by William Shakespeare. Act 1, Scene 1. Enter Bernardo and Francisco, 2 sentinels. Bernardo. Who's there? Francisco answered. Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself. Long live the king. Bernardo. He. You come most carefully upon your honor. 'Tis now struck 12. Get thee to bed, Francisco. For this relief, much thanks. 'Tis bitter cold, and I am sick at heart. Have you had quiet guard? Not a mouse stirring. Well, good night. If you do meet Horatio and Marcellus, the rivals of my watch, bid them make haste. Enter Horatio and Marcellus. I think I hear them. Stand ho! Who's there? Friends, to this ground. And liegemen to the Dane. Give you good night. Or farewell, honest soldier. Who hath relieved you? Bernardo hath my place. Give you good night. Francisco exits. Hola, Bernardo. Say, what, is Horatio there? A piece of him, says Horatio. Welcome, Horatio. Welcome, good Marcellus. What, has this thing appeared again tonight, says Horatio. I've seen nothing. Horatio says 'tis but our fantasy, and will not let belief take hold of him, touching this dreaded sight twice seen of us. Therefore I have entreated him along with us, to watch the minutes of this night, that if again this apparition come, he may approve our eyes and speak to it. Tush, 'twill not appear. Sit down a while, and let us once again assail your ears, that are so fortified against our story. What we have 2 nights seen. Well, sit we down, and let us hear Bernardo speak of this. Last night of all, when yon same star that's westward from the pole had made his course to illumine that part of heaven where now it burns, Marcellus and myself, the bell then beating 1, enter the ghost. Peace! Break off! Look where it comes! Again! In the same figure like the king that's dead. Thou art a scholar? Speak to it, Horatio. Looks he not like the king? Mark it, Horatio. Most like. It harrows me with fear and wonder. It will be spoke to. Speak to it, Horatio. What art thou, that usurps this time of night, together with that fair and warlike form in which the majesty of buried Denmark did sometimes march? By heaven, I charge thee, speak. It is offended. See, it stalks away. Stay, speak, speak. I charge thee, speak. The ghost exits. It's cold. I'll edit that later in post-editing. actually, probably allergies. 'Tis gone, will not answer. How now, Horatio? You tremble and look pale. Is not this something more than fantasy? What think you on it? Before my God, I might not disbelieve without the sensible and true avouch of mine own eyes. Is it not like the king? As thou art to thyself, such was the very armour he had on when he in ambitious Norway combated. So frowned he once, when in an angry parle he smote the sledded Polacks on the ice. 'Tis strange. Thus twice before, and jump at this dead hour. If martial stalk hath he gone by our watch. In what particular thought to work I know not, but in the gross and scope of mine opinion, this bodes some strange eruption to our state. Good, now sit down and tell me, he that knows, why this same strict and most observant watch so nightly toils the subject of the land, and why such daily cast of brazen cannon and foreign mart for implements of war, why such impress of shipwrights, whose sore task does not divide the Sunday from the week? What might be toward that this sweaty haste doth make the night joint laborer with the day? Who is that can inform me? Well, that can I. At least the whisper goes so, says Horatio. Our last king, whose image even but now appeared to us, was, as you know, by Fortinbras of Norway, thereto pricked on by a most emulate pride, dared to the combat, in which our valiant Hamlet, for so this side of our known world esteemed him, did slay this Fortinbras, who by a sealed compact, well ratified by law and heraldry, did forfeit with his life all those his lands which he stood seized of to the conqueror, against the which a moiety competent was gauged by our king, which had returned to the inheritance of Fortinbras, had he been vanquisher, as by the same comart and carriage of the article designed. His fell to Hamlet. Now, sir, young Fortinbras, of unimproved metal hot and full, hath in the skirts of Norway here and there sharked up a list of lawless resolutes for food and diet to some enterprise that hath a stomach unto it, which is no other, as it doth well appear unto our state, but to recover of us, by strong hand and terms compulsatory, those foresaid lands so by his father lost. And this, I take, is the main motive of our preparations, the source of this our watch, and the chief head of this post-haste and rummage in the land. Bernardo says, I think it be no other but e'en so. Well may it soar that this portentous figure comes armoured through our watch, so like the king that was, and is the question of these wars. A mote it is to trouble the mind's eye. In the most high and palmy state of Rome, a little ere the mightiest Julius fell, the graves stood tenantless, and the sheeted dead did squeak and gibber in the Roman streets, as stars with trains of fire and dews of blood disasters in the sun, and the moist star, upon whose influence Neptune's empire stands, was sick almost to doomsday with eclipse, and even the like precursor feared events, as harbingers preceding still the fates and prologue to the omen coming on, have heaven and earth together demonstrated unto our climaters and countrymen. Enter the ghost. But soft! Behold, lo, where it comes again. I'll cross it, though it blast me. Stay, illusion! The ghost spreads its arms. If thou hast any sound or use of voice, speak to me. If there be any good thing to be done, that may to thee do ease and grace to me, speak to me. If thou art privy to thy country's fate, which happily foreknowing may avoid, oh, speak! Or if thou hast uphoarded in thy life extorted treasure in the womb of earth, for which they say you spirits oft walk in death, speak of it. the cock crows. "Stay! Speak! Stop it, Marcellus!" "Shall I strike it with my partisan?" "Do, if it will not stand." "'Tis here." "Ah, 'tis here." The ghost exits. "'Tis gone. We do it wrong, being so majestical to offer it the show of violence, for it is as the air invulnerable, and our vein blows malicious mockery." I was about to speak when the cock crew, and then it started like a guilty thing upon a fearful summons. I have heard the cock that is the trumpet to the morn doth with his lofty and shrill-sounding throat awake the god of day, and at his warning, whether in sea or fire, in earth or air, the extravagant and erring spirit hies to his confine, and of the truth herein this present object made probation. It faded on the crowing of the cock. Some say that ever against that season comes wherein our Saviour's birth is celebrated. This bird of dawning singeth all night long, and then they say no spirit dare stir abroad. The nights are wholesome, that no planets strike, no fairy takes, nor witch hath power to charm, so hallowed and so gracious is that time. So have I heard, and do in part believe it. But look, the morn, in russet mantle clad, walks o'er the dew of yon high eastward hill. Break we our watch up, and by my advice let us impart what we have seen tonight unto young Hamlet. For upon my life, this spirit dumb to us will speak to him. Do you consent we shall acquaint him with it, as needful in our loves, fitting our duty? Let's do it, I pray, and I this morning know where we shall find him most convenient. Exeunt. I had forgotten that the other reason I don't like these books is they have on the left-hand side a full glossary, which is really nice. Explain a lot of the phrases and the words as they go along, which is really neat, except for that you keep reading only on the right-hand side and don't do the left-right thing that I'm so used to, which is tricky. So the opening of the play. It opens with, who's there, right? Which is kind of this shocking opening. Ta-da! It's like da-da-da-dan, Beethoven opening or something like that. It's also a immediately suspicious opening. Who's there? And that suspicion runs throughout the play. Everybody's suspicious of everybody else because they're all plotting and planning and trying to get in good graces with the new king, Claudius. And since the murder of old Hamlet, nobody knows what kind of intrigue is going to happen next. Who's going to get cacked? Who's going to get whacked next? Plus, as we learn here in scene 1, even the guards don't know what's going on. They've been called to put on more armor. They've been called to go set a watch more. They put out defenses. They don't quite know why. So nobody knows why. But the whole state seems to be kind of motivating towards being more protected, more defensive, more suspicious. So you have this opening of who's there, which is kind of sets the tone. It's a powerful opening for a play, like I said, like that line out of Beethoven that you recognize immediately. Who's there sets the tone for the rest of the play. It reminds me a bit of the star-crossed lovers line from Romeo and Juliet that we just read. It also reminds me of that opening, I hate to say, from Plato. When Plato opens his great work of the Republic, he opens it with the Socrates saying, "I went down to the Piraeus to see the festival of Bendis." And that opening word in Plato, kata bane, kind of sets the tone for the rest of the work of the philosopher going down into the cave and going down to help others and going down to help Glaucon. You have a similar thing here of the who's there, the suspicion at the very opening. Everybody's what's going to happen next? What's our government doing now? Are they going to fix everything? Who's going to get whacked? Is there a big conspiracy, a QAnon thing going on here? Did somebody make this virus in order to wipe out the human race? it's that kind of suspicion where the whole state is just agitated with suspicion. And that's the setting of the whole of the play. I have a colleague who has suggested that same setting also reflects something from the Easter tradition, the quem quiritis in the Easter tradition. And I kind of like that. I like that idea that it's an echo of. Now, it doesn't mean that this whole play is about the Easter tradition. It could be in some ways calling it into question, the opening of the tomb and the emptiness that's there, because it certainly fits into the idea of scholasticism and whether there's anything out there. It certainly fits into there. But if nothing else, it's certainly an echo of it. It's something which, when you start the play with this, the audience might have recognized that this was part of that tradition. This is part of that festival, or at least echoed back to it. It'd be like saying now, a social distancing. And everybody knows what social distancing is, right? That opening of the play then also opens with the two characters, Bernardo and Francesco, which I find it interesting. Shakespeare does this frequently. He has Italian names, even though it's in Denmark and it's on an English stage. Kind of strange. But why those names? I wonder, why does he choose Bernardo and Francesco? I don't know. What do you think? Do you have any insights into that? Could it have any relation to Bernard of Clairvaux? I don't know. Francis of Assisi? I don't know. If so, one of them leaves. One of them leaves and one of them stays. So if it's Francisco who leaves, then what's that say about the Franciscans? Who knows? But the other characters who come on, right? Marcellus and Horatio. Horatio is a friend of Hamlet's from Wittenberg College. And he has stayed there at the Elsinore, the castle at Elsinore. But he is a rational young man. He's been brought up thinking reason can triumph over everything. Reason can explain everything. Reason can tell us all the secrets of human nature and tease out all of the hidden things of nature. And I think in this opening scene, he encounters something which is highly unreasonable. That is a ghost. Right? And he doesn't quite know how to fit that into that nice little neat world of his of rational thought. It's sort of like what could prove that there is another world? What could prove that there is another world is that suddenly a ghost appears. And this ghost could be something which actually is from the other world, if the other world exists. It could be, as some authors have claimed, that the ghost is merely a figment of Hamlet's imagination. But that seems odd to me, because the play begins explicitly with a ghost and no Hamlet. In other words, the ghost operates independently of Hamlet. And so it's like Hamlet is discovering the ghost rather than making the ghost up. Is that a parallel to the scholastic tradition? I would think it might be. That maybe Shakespeare is saying from the start, there are things in the world that are mysterious and inexplicable and defy reason. And they don't fit neatly into that nice, reasonable little box that we want. And one of them is this ghost thing, which Hamlet doesn't experience first. It's first experienced by Horatio and Marcellus and Bernardo. And Horatio can't explain that, but he can't explain why they're all fortifying the palace and fortifying the castle. And his explanation is that young Fortinbras from the neighboring country wants to come and take back the land that Hamlet Sr. took from his father. And so Fortinbras has raised a mercenary army, and he's marching towards Denmark in order to take back the land in combat and in battle. And so everybody in Elsinore, the capital of Denmark, is agitated, on edge, because they know they're going to be facing combat soon. And then the ghost appears, of course. And anytime a ghost appears in a Shakespearean play, he takes this from the Romans, and Horatio makes this explicit, this connection. Anytime a ghost appears in a Shakespearean play, it shows something is afoot, something is going on. Right? Ghosts, witches, like in the opening of Macbeth, spirits, demons, those all show something is not right, something is going wrong. And so you have at the very opening of the play suspicion, you have militarism, you have the ghost, you have agitated state, everything kind of in chaos. It's like disrupted. This isn't peaceful Elsinore. And the king is dead, right? And this ghost is walking around. The king is dead, and the new king is, as we find out, is freshly married to the widow. And that's the opening of the play. So here's the setting of the play, into which Hamlet then is introduced. And I've always thought this is kind of intriguing that Shakespeare does this. He doesn't just open with Hamlet walking on stage and saying, "Howdy, folks, I'm Hamlet." So Western Hamlet, right? Texas Hamlet. Howdy. Instead, he has the atmosphere or the matrix or the womb of Denmark, into which Hamlet is then placed. Like, this is what Hamlet has to deal with. Not just the death of his father, but the political intrigues afterwards, the militarism, the suspicion of everybody, the ghost walking about, the worry about whether or not there's anything beyond this world, as we see in some of his speeches. Hamlet, we find, is one rather disturbed young man. He's not a teen. He's apparently somewhere in his mid-20s. But he's a disturbed young man. He's wrestling with a lot. It's one of the reasons I think the play is so powerful to give voice to what young people go through, and old people like myself too, but what young people go through, because frequently we think, oh, they're just angsty young teens, or they're just emos, But actually, with my experience, 25 years working with young people, there's a lot going on interiorly, and they're dealing with a lot of crap. And how they handle it and get through alive and in one piece is miraculous, is providential. So when we see Hamlet dealing with this sort of thing, we can say, well, there's a young man who's dealing with something that a lot of young people go through. We'll see him in the next scene. But until that time, I think Andrew has walked through the screen far too much now, and we're going to turn off so he can have no more airtime. Otherwise, I have to pay him royalties, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to sign off now, and thanks so much for joining me, you all. If you enjoyed this little foray into this text, then I highly encourage you to bye, Andrew. Highly encourage you to go and check out my Patreon page. And if you want to become my patron, I'd very much appreciate that. My family would appreciate it. Otherwise, check out the Shakespeare 2020 program and the Shakespeare 2020 project on Facebook. It's really quite a lively little discussion over there. Also, check out the History of the English Language podcast. It's a great podcast to listen to. And frequent your local businesses. And until we meet again, which hopefully will be soon, we can read more Hamlet then. Stay safe, stay healthy. God bless you all.